This is where we stand, man. Okay, like this is the question of the day. Actually, I don't even think it's a question. I think it's a resolute truth that you can't turn back from the progression. You can't turn back from the becoming. You can't turn back from what is called to you to do forth. There is no regression, man. I'm gonna draw this out because I think it's worth doing to understand. To understand the nature of what's happening, right, in our world, in our lives, and the process that we undergo naturally as part of a greater unfolding, a greater progression. I'm almost laughing, but I'm taking it so seriously. But I'm going to take it very seriously. But it is kind of fun. I'm finding myself laughing at it. But the duality, right? So. Okay. You have to understand the nature of what's true and be able to sit there and comprehend yourself within the context of what you are a part of, right? So the question that we have is, or really the answer to whatever question that is had, is that there is no alignment. Being aligned with the truth is being. It never has. There are never consequences for being aligned with the truth versus not, right? So if you're thinking like, what do I do in this circumstance? What do I do in this case? There are never consequences for being aligned with the truth versus not. Okay, now we're gonna lay this out here a little bit. Okay, so you got to understand. We understand reality, right? The origin point of reality, the initial conditions of reality is a full. Okay, the initial conditions of reality is a full state. So you have the form itself expressed as such. The conditions of eternal, consecrated wholeness, oneness, right? So this is when we have the burgeonings of procession, the burgeonings of anything, the seed to begin, the seed to start. Right, you could think of this as essentially as, not whatever the fuck that was, but as one. So that this is the thing that can be understood from this aspect of wholeness is one. We call this unity. This is the state of unity. This is the initial point. This is the initial point of the turning. This is where things start, right? So let's say the form itself has the expression. Let's just give it a mathematical function. The form is defined as a function of x, right? And x can just be understood. X is understood as a progression through the form itself. So x as a variable. You can think of it analogously to time. Now, time maybe has some mirrored aspect of what the recursion is, but it's simply the process of the form expressing itself through various dialectic instantiations of itself. It peels itself apart. So the form f of x is all of f of x. All of the function is included. All of f of x is included over all of x. Let's just clarify that. Over x equal. Let's even give x a negative state. And all the way to infinity. Right? So as x increases, f of x, what it does is it shows its parts. It shows its slices of itself. So that, okay. Let's understand the form as it is. So the form at x equals 0, at the initial conditions of the form is unity, is wholeness. All right. Now, as x increases, as we move through, let's just say x equals 1. I'm arbitrarily going to use 1 here, okay? Just to give some semblance of a counting system that we can understand to progress through it. So what happens to the form, okay? Now this part of it is difficult to understand because there's a paradoxical aspect of it. There is, within the form, you have to understand f of x inherently paradoxical. It's paradoxical. The way that it's paradoxical is that the form holds itself, f of x. So f of x contains all of the form over all x. Excuse my camera work here, but over all x. However, f of xn, the complexity of the form is not equal to f of x n plus 1 complexity. Okay, so what we have to understand is that the form contains all of itself over all f of x. So this aspect of unity, right? This aspect of the initial conditions of the infinity being expressed in the initial form is how it holds continuity, right? So this aspect of it, this fullness is maintained over all x. This is the thing that has to be understood, is that this paradox is at the heart of the understanding of what's needed to understand what's going on here. Because this initial condition, this initial state does not lose itself as we go through the recursions of the form. The initial part of the state, and this is due to the equation, the form, sorry, not the equation, the form, let's just say form for now, without going into it mathematically, the form, it engages with itself in a manner that as it progresses through the recursions, it retains an aspect, paradoxically, without carrying all of unity, without carrying all of the preceding f of x. It maintains, it carries over the information holds, i.e. unity holds to, as we go to f of x at n, right? So as we progress through the recursions, unity is holding. There is a substrate level. There is a substrate level within the form where the fullness is maintained. So we have to keep this in mind. Keep this in mind as we're going through this, okay? So even though we're showing here that this is blank right now, I'm going to enter in the complexity. Unity is still maintained, right? So unity holds over all x paradoxically. Paradoxical aspect to it, because to understand it, you have to understand that this thing is containing all of itself at every moment. It contains itself at every moment. Now let's return for once before we get into the recursion at 1. Let's return to f of x of 0 and unity. So unity, it has a construction of infinity, right? So the infinite filled form, which again holds. That holds paradoxically for the whole thing. Now, what we mean by an infinitely filled form is that every point of the form has been expressed at that stage. So every part of the form is filled. So what happens when you have an infinitely filled space? What occurs is that essentially any point within that space becomes relatively meaningless to the next, because the infinity reduces any distinction between individual points within that space to literally a meaningless quantity, because of the fact that there are an infinite amount of expressions of uniqueness within the infinity. The infinity renders the entirety of that space to be relatively meaningless within itself. So you only have, that's why you have the definition of one. That's why one is truly like really, it's really just one. Because when you have infinity, the only thing you can have is to say we have one infinity here. Everything within the infinity loses its distinction. Now we're saying that paradox, that not the paradox, but that nature, that fact that we have only the infinite that can count as one. We have an infinitely filled form holding throughout the whole recursion. So the entirety of the form has this quality. The entirety of the form has this quality. Now, let's start to look at the other recursions. So now a point on this. So what the level of complexity within unity. This is what happens: is complexity essentially is reduced to zero, because you got to understand that at the infinitely filled space, there is not any distinction with it. It's counterintuitive, because you would think that an infinitely filled space would be the most complex thing that there could possibly be, right? Not true. Not true, because what it does is the infinity. Look, the step at x. Look, we'll get to this, but the step right before you get to infinity, like if you have an almost infinitely filled space, it's literally the complexity is off the charts to an infinite. The complexity becomes infinity. But the minute that you fill that space infinitely, the complexity drops to zero. This is the distinction. This is the major distinction going on here, is saying that the form, the minute that it becomes filled completely to an infinitely filled state, it loses all of its complexity entirely. Right? But when it's at an infinitely complex state, right before the moment where it gets filled at an infinite level, the moment before that, it is at its infinite complexity. This is the major distinction. And we're going to run through this here. We're going to run through this here because this thing wraps around on itself, and you'll fucking see. At the moment that it becomes infinitely filled, the complexity drops to zero. The moment right before, and I'm saying moment, but really it's the unfolding of the form's expression. The form expresses itself from the initial condition. Okay, my phone keeps dying. It's pissing me off here. The phone keeps dying, but we're just gonna keep. I don't even know if the last one got recorded. We're just gonna keep going here with this instance. So what we have. We have the form at x equals 0 is at unity, right? And we've discussed that unity holds paradoxically over all x for this unslicing, this unfolding of f of x. Unity holds paradoxically even as the complexity increases. So let's look at x equals 1 now. The x equals 1 state, while remembering that unity still is holding, but within that unity there is a granularity to the complexity, which begins to increase in magnitude. I mean, the complexity is going to increase here as we move across from x1 all the way up to infinity minus 1. So remember, at the beginning, at unity, complexity is reduced to 0. Now, so at x equals 1, the form begins to hold. let's just give it like that. It holds complexity within itself. So complexity C greater than 0, C greater than f of x at 0. Duh, right? Because at unity, the complexity is 0. Now, so we're starting to have a complexity emerge out of the form. Now, remember, unity holds over all f of x. Unity holding is an aspect of f of x's entire junction here is that unity is holding. So let's look now. Let's look at x equals 2. X equals 2. So we had complexity at this level here. Now we start to have complexity really start to find itself in a greater fashion. So complexity at f of x of 2 is greater than complexity at f of x 1. So we can just write this. Let's see. Let me just write this out here. So we have complexity C increases over x all the way. So where we're at right now, as the form is unfolding itself, we have unity is holding. Unity holds throughout the whole form. Not only in the initial state, at unity itself, at x equals 0, but throughout the entirety of it, paradoxically, right? Because we start to see complexity. Complexity is starting to emerge at x equals 1, and it becomes greater at x equals 2. Let's go through x equals 3 here. We're going to do an x equals 3, remembering that the unity is maintained the whole time and the complexity is increasing the whole time, okay? Now we have x equals 3. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take two more states of f of x. We're going to have x equals infinity minus 1, and then we're going to have a final state of x equals infinity, because these are two important end states, essentially. So for x equals 3, right, let's recall that we have unity at 0. Unity holds through the entire process. Again, paradoxically, that has to emerge. It's a paradoxical fact that if complexity is emerging in an increasing fashion, unity holding is it's paradoxical, and it doesn't make sense. Like this piece of complexity is coming out of a space that it shouldn't exist in, but it does. This is the amazing part about it, right? This is the impossible part about it. But it is what it is. I mean, mathematically. And again, I'm not breaking this down to the nuts and bolts, but I'm going through like an exemplification visually of what this is without going into the granularity of the actual mechanics. So x equals 3, we have a more complex state. Let's see if I can visually represent this in a proper or adequate way here without making it look dumb. So x equals 3, we have complexity again increases, right? We have our complexity C increases over x. So now we're at x equals 3, complexity has increased from 2. So let's just say C x3 greater than Cx2. Keep that over there. Okay, so that's x3. So we kind of have, our phone keeps dying, so I keep losing track of where the fuck I am with this. But we're going to go, let's do a quick summary here, and then we're going to keep going on it. So right now what we have, right, initial conditions, we have the form is infinite, the space in the form is infinitely filled, we're at unity. Complexity is reduced to 0 because of the infinity. Now, again, unity holds over all x paradoxically, right? So that's a component, and complexity is increasing over X. And again, this is the paradoxical aspect of it, because there is a paradoxical remainder that is retained as we progress through X. In the mathematics, there's a piece of it that just doesn't hold logically, but it's there, and it maintains the prior state. So the prior state is maintained, so the unity is maintained. So okay, so we have, right, at unity we have a fully infinitely filled space, unity. Again, it's so important to stress this. The unity is maintained over all X, but the complexity is increasing. So at fx equals 1, we start to get more complex. We start to get complexity. It's above 0. Then at 2, it increases. 3, it increases. Blah blah blah, et cetera, et cetera. Complexity increases over all of X. Now, as we we get to this state, right? We get to X equals infinity minus 1. So now we are at the very end. We are at the very end of the recursion, right before it gets to infinity. So what we have here, we have a state where complexity is essentially, infinity. I mean, I'm trying to like comprehend, like, how could, it's literally like every space, it's just as close as you can get to being infinitely complex. I'll try to represent that with some sort of, visual. I mean, obviously it's impossible because the whole thing is going to be full everywhere. It's essentially, like, you got to understand, like, we're one step away from an infinite amount of recursions. Honestly, you never get to fucking infinity. You never get there. You can't get to, this is the thing about infinity, that, again, these paradoxes are so important to what this is because they underlie the reality that we live in. They underlie the world that we live in. There's paradoxes at the bottom and the conceptualization of the real space. Mathematics is predicated upon paradox. This is when you start to see paradox. This is where you see. And okay, the unity holding, I'm trying to remember where I got this from mathematically. This is, again, I'm showing this granular representation of this progression is more of a philosophical take. I have it grounded in some mathematics I'm not going into here, but this is essentially a philosophical take. So take it as you will, but it's the representation of the exemplification of the unfolding that we're discussing. So, and I'm getting to my point here because I'm making a point to myself. Again, this is all for me. Really, truly, I'm making a point to myself that you never pay a price for going closer to truth. And you can't turn back from taking steps towards the truth. So I'm going to look at it. Actually, I'm going to say that the complexity is essentially infinity, because when we're one click away on the recursion from being at infinity, we're essentially have an infinitely complex space, because now it is not infinity. We're not at the infinite space. So we're not at unity. So not unity. But at unity, the paradox, right? Like, we're paradoxically at unity. That's what this arrow is that fullness is maintained through the whole thing. So well, I guess I shouldn't say that we're not at unity. We still have complexity. So really what that is, i.e. complexity does not equal 0 at x equals infinity minus 1. And I'm going to this limit case is useful because it exemplifies the transition from the point of complexity emerging. This is the end of complexity. This is complexity's final gasp. This is the point where we've gone through this growth. This is the unfolding. This is the great unfolding. When we go from full one unity fullness at the origin. We move through an increasingly complex space. However, its paradox is still maintained with the unity. We're getting complexity emerging, growing across X. And now when we get to X equals infinity, what we have is we have a complexity so dense that it takes up the entire form, right? So the complexity has become so, we have had complexity fill the space all the way. Complexity has filled the space all the way. So what does that look like? Well, it looks exactly like the initial conditions. It looks exactly like unity. This marker is running out. But essentially, and again, unity is maintained. I got to keep stressing this. Paradoxically maintained over all X. However, we again reach this state where we can only count this as one. We've lost complexity. Complexity, actually, I'm going to represent this as a process. Complexity goes to 0. So this is what we end up at. We end up at a state where f of 0 is equal to f of infinity. Because it has gone from itself to itself. It has reached a state of re-expression of itself. So this is life. This is reality. This is what's happening. This is the unfolding. This is the unfolding of the universe. We move in the direction. And complexity increases infinitely until we're to the point where we have recreated the initial condition and we are again at a state of infinite fullness. Now, the paradox is so important here because what it does is it underwrites the whole process with a fullness that expresses the whole thing as indistinct from itself, while at the same time, complexity is becoming greater and greater. With it keeps dying, it's driving me fucking crazy here, but I'm trying to get this thing. But I don't even know where I was at. But essentially, what we're dealing with here is we are dealing with a dynamical state of an iterated maintenance of initial conditions while injecting complexity on top of it through, I don't know if injecting is the right word, but paradoxically there is allowed to be complexity that emerges even though the infinite state is maintained. What do I mean? What do I mean by the infinite state is maintained? What I mean by that is the interconnectedness of the entire form is the same. The expression of the form at the initial conditions does not lose itself. You do not lose that infinity as you're moving through the form. So the fullness, the state of being in an indistinct relative state between components is maintained through the whole thing. However, on top of that, you're also getting a progression of increasing complexity up to and including an almost infinite complexity at just before we reach the recursion of infinity, of an infinite number of recursions. So at that point, you essentially have infinite complexity and complexity not able to exist at all due to the state of fullness of the form. Now the form itself is not any one of these states. This is actually the thing about this is the truth about the form is that it's not chopped up into x equals 1 or x equals 2. It is the f of x. It is the thing in its entirety. What you're doing here is you're slicing apart the pieces. What you're doing here is you're slicing up the pieces of it, and you're looking at it at imagine slicing up whatever you look under a microscope. You look at a bunch of different pieces of an animal. I don't even know what they do under microscopes, but like a thin section, right? It's different slices of the full thing. The full thing is the whole process. So this is where we get to a point. That the only things we can understand, because look, you got to understand this, the complexity, the states of complexity that we are seeing expressed here. When we want to start talking about this being analogous or reflecting something reflecting the real world, what ends up happening here is that complexity within the real world, this form at like any point of the recursion, first of all, it's in unity in itself. So it is infinitely complex from the start. We can't understand, human beings can't understand that. We're somewhere in here, man. We're somewhere in one of these pieces of the complex nature. We're like sitting within the thing. We can't see this. We can understand nothing. Honestly, we can understand nothing except for the process that's happening here, and then the points where it says one. One is the only fucking thing that we can get, because everything else is so complex that it just becomes, it's out of our conceptualization. I don't know what full complexity means within the form. None of us do. We can't even see past our fucking, where the light touches in our fucking universe. We don't know. There's an endless, this is what this is pointing to. There is an endless information regime that exists, and we exist inside of it. We are a part of it. All of the dynamics occurring, all of the inner chaotic states and fluctuations and strain and the attractors with whatever's happening inside of the complexity, we'll never fucking get it. So this is my whole shtick, right? My whole shtick that I've been talking about, the whole fucking thing is based around the fact that when it comes to reality, we can really only understand two things. We can understand the essence of one, the numeric aspect of fullness, that can be conceptualized within the human mind. And then we can understand this process that is going on at the granular level. This process is the unfolding of reality. And as the recursion as complexity increases within the form, there are only two things we can understand. We can understand the form expressed at its full infinite state, which is only able to be understood as that which gives itself over to a numerical aspect of being one. Interesting that we have that basically underlines our entire understanding of mathematics, one. And then the other thing that we can understand is the process, the unfolding. What's happening here, right? There is a becoming. We're going in a direction here. It's not temporal. I'm not talking about a temporal spatial regime here. This isn't fucking quantum mechanics. This isn't general relativity. This is nothing. This is this is the highest level of conceptualization that we can actually it's, this is, you know, this comes from my attempt to understand reality. Right? I want to know the truth about reality. This has been my fucking goal for the past X amount of years. I've been delving into it. I've wanted to understand time, right? You get to a point where you look at the world, at the real world, the natural world. It is so complex that mathematics indicates that there is an infinite amount of complexity. The incompleteness theorem indicates that there is a paradox at the heart of mathematics that shows that there can never be a bottom found. There's not a place you can go to see where the truth. There is no bottom of the truth. There is just an ever increasing pit that you look into and you say, hey, this thing gets so fucking complex that we'll never fucking understand it. You can't sit within there. You cannot sit within this thing and expect to look around and understand an infinitely complex space. An infinitely complex space. And again, we're putting aside the fact that it's already at unity throughout this whole process. But you cannot understand the infinitely complex space from inside the infinitely complex space. So this is really what this is what we're left looking at. This is what we can understand. You want to understand the truth. You want to understand what reality is. Well, I did. And this is really what there is to understand about it. Everything else is poking around in the dark with a prodding stick, trying to see what can we fucking see with our blind eyes, because we're human beings. We don't understand shit. That's what we're never gonna know the truth. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter if I find the equation for time. It doesn't fucking matter because time is some nested, slower level exemplification of some fractal reality that is levels and layers above what we could ever conceive of in our fucking minds. It's way beyond the fucking border of understanding. The truth lies at an infinite distance. We'll never fucking know. But what this gives is a picture of the process. The things we can understand are that infinity, that fullness, that state of fullness, which finds itself expressed at the very beginning and the very end of this process. And interesting, died again. It's driving me crazy. I'm trying to get this recorded, but keeps dying. Hate it. Where I was at, what we were pointing to is what we're saying is the initial conditions are actually replicated right here. And it's interesting to see, right? So we have infinity is essentially equal to 0, right? So we have a return to these conditions. Now, it's like a duplicated aspect of it because now we have the paradox of unity has been duplicated in the complexity. I don't know, maybe it just turns into itself, or maybe it is like a doubled up form and it just keeps going. It keeps fucking going. I mean, there could be a process above this. This is the thing too, is like, this doesn't necessarily have constraints above it. But this is, I mean, this as an analytical process to understand the dynamical underpinnings of reality, you know, philosophical and granular. Let's just keep it at that. But look, well, what was I pointing out? Oh, yeah. So we have infinity is essentially equal to 0, right? So now we have infinity minus 1. So that's 0 minus 1, as we said. So 0 minus 1 is -1, right? So a basis for count for negative number. I don't know. But I was doing a great rant last time, and it got fucking deleted. And it drives me fucking up a wall that got deleted. It actually drives me crazy that because it was pretty good rant. Lost it. It just got deleted because the phone died. But well, okay. Look, man, the complexity of the fucking thing is so dense that we'll never understand reality. We'll never understand reality. I just I want to know the truth. That's my whole thing for the past. I wanted to know what's going on. I wanted to know the reality. And it's like, you look at this and it's like, we'll never know. You can't dig into that infinite, you can't dig into infinite complexity as a human being and think that you're going to get it. You can't. It's not going to happen, man. Like, we're in school learning fucking calculus and like, at the best of our fucking minds are doing like quantum mechanics and like higher level physics. But that doesn't scratch the surface of what's going on beyond the limits of understanding, beyond the limits of dimensionality. There's always another piece of the truth. There's always another piece of reality. And you got to look at it, what the progression of becoming is going. I don't see this process going backwards. I don't see the process going backwards, right? We have an arrow to the recursion. The recursion has an initial point and it has a final point. Now it does seem to start over on itself and go and run again, and it might be stacking recursions on top of itself and like referencing its like a helical pattern where it grows linearly or circularly and then upwards as well. So there might be dimensionality to this becoming. Or it was like, dude, we'll never fucking know the truth. We're not going to know the truth of reality. Science isn't going to answer that question for us. And it's like, look, the best way I can see it is that there is a process going on within existence itself. This is the process of existence. This is the unfolding of reality. This is reality unfolding itself and expressing itself. And look, man, the way I live my life, the way I look at, the way I've experienced is based on experience. The way that I've experienced how things are, there is a truth. There is a deep truth. It's there. I'm not saying it's not there. I'm not saying it's not worth understanding. I'm not saying it's not worth understanding. I'm not maligning science for making an attempt to understand the truth. What I'm saying is that it exists, but it's so complex that we'll never fucking understand it in its entirety. So it's like we have to reorganize or reconstruct our relationship to the truth. What is our relationship to what's real? Is it just going to be limited to what we can fucking prove in a lab? Or are we going to allow this infinite complexity that's expressing itself all around us, coming into our minds, coming into our spaces, coming in through our dimension from another? Dude, look again. This is at the point anywhere within here at these complexity levels that are so fucking dense. Again, this is just a granular representation of a truth, man. This is the progression of things. I don't know, people want to say, oh, you can't prove it. This is philosophically founded. It's philosophically founded. It's mathematically pointed at. In many instances, this is the dynamical process. This is complexity emerging out of simplicity. This is the circle of life. This is the circle of existence. This is the cosmic rhythm of perfect form finding itself again through a process that's so convoluted and interwoven and complex that you can't even understand it. But at the very end, it pops up with one thing, the one form express. I mean, the whole thing is the form, but that's the whole thing. Unity holds over all X. So the form is retained over the whole thing. But it's like, you know what it is? You know what it really is? It's to point to, there's two things here. One is the connection. One is the circumstance of how we see interconnectedness. And to understand that nature of infinity means that any relative comparisons within it are moot. You cannot make them. And if unity is maintained through this whole process, then there is no comparison to anything. Everything becomes uncomparable relatively. Now you do have this complexity emerging. That's the paradox, is that there's still nuance. There's still novelty. We still have new things coming into the world. We still have this pathway of increasing complexity that we go down. We see it in the world. We see our world become more complex. We move from single cell life forms to what we are now. I mean, doesn't that look like what we're looking at here? Isn't that kind of similar to like a lot of things we see in nature, man? The world reflects its truth. The world reflects the greater truth. You see it in a puddle on the ground. You see it in a fucking rainbow. You see it in the night sky. Like, this shit is all around us. We're in this thing. We're in it, and it is everything. Now, is there a greater thing is there a hand controlling this? Who started the clock? Who started the recursion? Who made the form? I don't know. I'm not saying this is the end all be all of answers, but what I'm really saying is that this unfolding is taking place in your life. It's taking place in our world. It's taking place in reality. And when you can put yourself at the very edge, when you can put yourself at that place where you're, I mean, look, man, this is the other thing about this too, is like the fact that it's infinite. It's an infinite amount of fucking the recursion is infinite. So it's always going. It actually turns into this thing where it's just like, it's like stuck. It's like frozen. Does it actually even move? Or like when you get to like the deepest parts of approaching infinity, when you're getting to these levels where you're getting even close to it, like you can't get to infinity. You can't get there. So it's like at a certain point, it just becomes like this frozen in time thing. That's what the unfolding is, man. That's what the fucking whole program's about. That's what the whole thing is about. It's about like this, it's this static pose between the eternal fucking form and the place we are now. And whatever place of complexity that we're at this point in the recursion, and just reaching towards that form, trying to achieve perfection, but never getting there because you can't get there, because you can't count to infinity. You got to understand the infinity is the thing in these. The infinity is the thing in these that is making these paradoxes exist. The fact that this even runs, like, you can't have something that becomes, you can't become the beginning at the very end in a counting process that can't be completed. That can't this is the fucking thing. I wanted to do this a little tired and hungry, so I'm at the raw edge of it, man. But it's just like, yeah, I think you can maybe feel the fucking exhaustion. Like, I wanted to know. You can't know. It's not going to give up its secrets. This is as good as we can get. Yeah, people are going to keep fucking doing physics and exploring the particle realm and exploring alternate dimensions or whatever, man. It's like, it could be, we'll never fucking know all of that. You can't know everything. And so I just would appeal to people that, number one, get in line with the unfolding, because there is look, one thing is, this has a truth to it. There's a truth to this, right? There is a truth. This is real. This shit exists. And that eternal stretching for the next recursion, that eternal dare to grasp infinity while being planted in a count, in a level of complexity that will never be relinquished, and we can never really get out of the process. It's just like, be in the process, because the process is like the only thing we can really understand. We have the form, the fullness, the unity, one, and one is just coming. I'm not trying to fucking make a cult of one. I'm just saying, like, that's like the only thing we can really understand is like the process that is happening here, the unfolding, and then the infinitely filled space, which is just can be conceived of as one thing, the eternal. This is the eternal form. This is the eternal form and the great unfolding. So that's it.